first education for bursaries now should not be funded, so that we get away of dealing with the expenditure side of this country. Unless we fix that, we are pretentious when we are all saying that the burden on Kenyans is too heavy. This, as Swahilis put it, ni musiba wa kujitakia.
Okay.
Na hautastahili kilio.
So, Mheshimiwa, I hear you saying that everything that's happening at the moment is in regard to fulfilling the expectations of Kenyans. Our audiences on KTN News join us now at this hour, and as we continue with this, Nerima has a question.
Yes. And it's perfect in terms of what you've ended on, in terms of pretentious is what I'm thinking. But I'm looking at the cover of The Star, and it basically saying how the president and the deputy have spent 1.4 billion. You have mentioned how he enjoys to travel. He's an approximate president on traveling in 9 months. And in the Standard today, we see the Parliamentary Budget Office basically warning and saying that the new measures in taxes, increased taxes, may lower KRA revenue. So any logical person would see taxes are being high, so consumers, citizens are going to change their everyday life to meet those taxes. We might travel less, we will do less in terms of what we buy, or we will try and buy things cheaper. We're seeing a decrease. As a citizen, we are tightening our belts. Is it double speak when we see our administration actually not tightening, but loosening? They're traveling much more.
Buying another belt.
Buying another belt. In this travel of 9 months, 1.4 billion. You don't see double standards here? Or to you what?
Now, it is not about to me, it is about us, Kenyans. And as you say that, I think 2 or so weeks ago, the president came to launch the industrial park in my constituency.
Yes.
The first ever to be launched, and I thank this government for making West Mugirango and Nyamira Industrial Park the first one to be opened. And if you asked me, the turnout of people in that constituency and county was good. And everywhere the president visits, there is apparent gratitude, and there is demand by the areas that have not been visited to have their turn to host the presidency. And therefore, in answer to your question, if the public demands a service and demands presence of the executive, because even as elected members of parliament, it becomes suicidal when you don't go to your constituency for 2 or 3 consecutive weeks. And therefore you are compelled to be proximate to your employers, who are the electorate, and therefore, in answer to your question, how does leadership visit or travel to the employers if not at the employer's expense? And that is why, as I answered, that if as Kenyans we have chosen a certain lifestyle, a certain expectation that you need your elected member of parliament here every other day, and now the cost of fuel is even going higher, yet you are required everywhere, the presidency is required everywhere, and I say, let me have one constituency or county today come out and say, we do not consider the visit by the president or deputy president or cabinet to our constituency necessary. Let us save that money. I want to see who will be the first volunteer. And that is why I insisted that as Kenyans, when we do a reality check, let us look at the expenditure. What are we expecting? What can we abstain from? And if we do, then that will translate to savings. As long as we demand service and as much as service is seen to include visitations by the head of state, including the rotational hosting of public holidays in various counties in the Republic. I mean, we just have
so I hear you saying, Weshimiwa, that the way things are going, it is only to be expected. If you want a government that is working to be able to fulfill the expectations of people, the travel that we see, whether it's internal or external, the spending that we see by government is justified. And unless somebody has a better plan for how these things can work, then we should actually just bite the bullet and allow things to unfold. That's part one. But then how these things are broached to the people of Kenya, then also very important. The front page of the Standard today talks about what would be seen as a rift amongst, people within government because of things being said in a certain manner, and another party feeling, look, man, Kenyans are suffering. The way in which you say things to people matters. So then that would bring about a certain rift. Doesn't it matter the picture that you show to Kenyans today of how you are handling matters? If you show them that you can get up and travel and do whatever you want to do in the midst of suffering, then that's one thing. And the deputy president, from where he was talking about this and saying, look, man, Kenyans are suffering. How you speak to them matters, which is now the subject for what we are saying is a possible rift. I would like to hear what you think about that.
Thank you. You are simply talking of the communication policy for Kenya, and in the past, of course, that there was a time we had an office of government spokesperson to give official communication of government issues, government policies, and government actions to the people of the Republic of Kenya. And truth be said, 1 year into office, the public communication aspect of this government has not been fixed. And therefore, everybody took office as they were, and their conduct before election continued to be the same conduct after election and or occupying government positions. This really calls for a scrutiny of who is saying what and whether they have what the lawyers would call a locus to speak what they are speaking. Otherwise, again, it boils down to us Kenyans, that as Kenyans glorify drama, glorify comedy, so that our leaders perform their comic ways to office and continue to maintain their audience through such comedy. And therefore, it will become difficult to unmake or remake the people who have wriggled their way to comedy, to office by entertaining their audience and electorate. And therefore, I'm urging us Kenyans to be a little more serious, like we are starting to be, on the conduct and the communication we receive from those of us in leadership. And where there is insensitive communication, it is important that Kenyans take their role as employers of the leadership, make them to account, and even do the ultimate. Some of the utterances, of course, which have come from the top leadership, particularly the executive, have not been extremely palatable. And truth be said, all those who have made those utterances had no business making those utterances, because one, they were not relating to their portfolio to start with. Two, it did not even arise out of any cabinet decision that had been taken for such communication to be issued. And then finally, the collective responsibility of our executive, I want to say, must be called upon. I have seen the deputy president trying to desperately do firefighting. But truth be told, and that we must be candid, that Kenyan citizens as employers of government deserve better, particularly when times are hard like they are.
Yes.
And therefore, I will not hesitate to condemn utterances that try to speak down on the Kenyan citizens, that try to wrap already raw wounds of Kenyan citizens. Kenyans are paining, and that is true. Of course, this transition is a painful transition in the short run, and during those times, the least we expect from us leadership is to try and explain to the employers that there is light at the end of the tunnel. We want to see a citizenship that is aware of what is happening, or that is made aware of what is being done to mitigate the current situation, and that gives hope that in a little while that things will, as I know they will, improve for the better.
You know, this isn't an easy road to travel, because I guess if you are my age, you will probably understand of a time when you could argue things were similar to what we have, but similar, but not the same. The situation we have right now, we've never been in before as a country. We simply haven't. We've been in situations where the Bretton Woods institutions have declined to give us money. We've been in situations where a government has declined to offer the help they give us. We've been in situations where we've had droughts. We've been in situations where the dollar has done a thing now. It may be surprising, but the issue of inflation first came to light in this country in the 70s. We didn't know inflation was something we didn't even know about. And it's around the time when OPEC was formed. And then so the word cartel hadn't even been invented then, but they became a cartel. So the price of oil kept doing the yo-yo. Now, right now, you cannot talk about the price of oil without asking, because there's been a comparison. In this year, it was this dollar. Now, it's this amount of dollar. But what was the exchange rate of the dollar? Because that's really at the heart of it. If indeed the dollar 3 years ago was close to 100 shillings and now it is 150, it means it is 150 times more than it was before. Now, it then becomes difficult to imagine that that is one component of the problems. Then we had this prolonged drought. Now we're expecting serious rainfalls. Then you have a government that is juggling all these things with a population that is constantly on the increase, and we have a young population. So those contributing to the government coffers are fewer than those who actually need the money and need to be sustained. Why am I going through this process? To explain that those in leadership don't bother to explain in a way that is understood. They issue blank statements. Sometimes when they're inclined, they will threaten. And when all seems to be up in the air, they'll make promises, whereas a simple little explanation would suffice. Now, whether somebody believes the explanation or not is a different matter altogether. But saying, folks, this is where we are in reality. Saying, brace for hard times, what the hell are you telling us? We already know, we are living it, so stop telling us what we know. Say, these are hard times, and then say, look, these are the things we want to do, and this is how we want to go about solving it. Because we don't elect leaders to tell us the problems we already know. We elect them so that they can help us solve these problems. Now, failure of government is also an interesting subject. It's interesting because whether the government, in my eyes, have failed or not depends on what I expect and what I consider to be success. But there is no government since independence that has not inherited someone else's mess. You inherit the benefits, but you inherit the mess as well. Now, the measure of your presidency or that government is in how you deal with your situation and what you inherited. That's what you judge you by. And you can't run away from it because it's in the same country. So again, the communication. And then there's the issue of the optics. We are told about the dire circumstances we are in. You know, optics are a terrible thing. They're a terrible thing because when you tell us as a leadership that we are suffering and the optics are you are not suffering. And why do we say this? It's like Kenya seems to be the one country where black SUVs are sold. There are so many. And then people can't simply travel to a place. They have to travel with an entourage of God knows how many vehicles. Now, in the larger scheme of things, the cost of these vehicles and travel, it may not be really that much if you look at the sort of budget we have. But the optics are terrible.
Yeah. How it looks matters.
Yes.
Isn't it?
When the banks tell us of the profits they make in the billions, tens of billions of shillings, against a backdrop of a situation where very many people in this country don't even know what they are going to eat. Some simply just starve.
Yeah.
Some even die of starvation. Again, optics. So you wonder, can the leadership see that this disparity is a recipe for a disaster?
Can you see, Mweshimiwa? It's a question. Can you
Yes,
see?
because these numbers are not getting less.
Exactly.
They are increasing.
Exactly.
When we had that throng of people going for KDF, I like that picture.
Scary. It's very scary.
Yes. You'd think they were demonstrating. They had actually gone to seek employment. 350 positions.
That's why their rallies are crowded.
Yes.
People are not working.
They have nothing
It's
to
an
do.
opportunity.
So if you call a rally, yeah, people will come.
That's why they come.
Now, all we're saying is we genuinely have a ticking time bomb, and the issue is not how to manage it, but how to actually provide solutions that people can see. And they say, we see a solution. We've seen this. And it doesn't have to be all at once. It has to be in bits. Now, you say you want your constitution to be a model constitution. I think, constituency rather. I believe you can do it.
And it will.
I believe you can do it. Yes, if you have the will to do it and you know how to go about it, then you will definitely do it. Now, unfortunately, what you want to do is not what everybody else who is in your position wants to do. So, where are we? This is why you find when we are at a loss and we don't know what to do, we just summarize and say, government.
Where should the eye be? Where should we cast the eye for solutions here? And I think that was the thrust of this question. Then moving forward, that a year has gone by and this is what we are seeing at this point. Are we bracing ourselves for more difficulty moving forward? Or are we saying truly this is teething and once the tooth cracks the skin, then we'll be fine? Is that what you're saying?
No.
It's a tough one, isn't it?
Yeah. What I ask Kenyans is not to embrace despair, because this country has been through worse before and picked itself up. And,
worse than this, no.
I know it has been worse than this. The only difference now is that we know and tell each other what we are going through. Before, we have been suffering in quietness. And I like the concern that Kenyans, as a citizenry, are having on what is happening today. And it is this that will enable leadership to be a bit sensitive on the decisions we take and how we handle public affairs. But all said and done, the employment or unemployment problem is not a creation of the current administration. Let us admit that. These are not miracle youths who were born yesterday after the last election. Let us admit that it is now that it is playing out, and thanks to the hustler movement, because it woke up everybody to claim a sense of belonging and livelihood in this republic. And that is why when I look at the strategy of the Kenya Kwanza government, that seeks to address this problem, because we lost it because all those youth we were seeing looking for employment simply had no skill. They were simply making their bodies available for employment. And that is why we admittedly have lost a generation who, through our curricula, were teaching and examining people to get employed. And you ask each of them, which employment are you looking for? They say any. If it is KDF, they will all crowd there. If it is NYS, they will all crowd there. And this is the greatest failure of us as Kenyans, that our education system has been rolling out unemployable youth or graduates at whatever level you are talking about. And therefore, late as it may be, this government has been very strategic and emphatic that let us build vocational institutes, let us build technical institutes and inculcate skills on these people. I'm telling you, if those children seeking to go to